I did not expect a 2026 reincarnation Beastman romance called Married to the Hidden Dragon King to make me genuinely furious within, like the first 10 minutes, and then immediately have me grinning like an idiot right after. It's that kind of show. The kind that punches you in the gut with betrayal, then turns around and whispers, "Yeah, but what if the person everyone calls worthless is actually the only one who sees you?" And suddenly you're sitting there on your couch, staring at the paused screen like you're waiting for the characters to explain themselves to you personally. Welcome back to Flick Flair, by the way. If you like drama reviews that are less "here's what happened" and more "here's why my heart was doing that weird clench thing," you're in the right place. And yeah, if you feel like subscribing, I'd love to have you around. I'm going with moderate spoilers in this review, meaning I'm going to talk about the big early turns and the emotional reveals. But I'm not here to bulldoze every late-game surprise like I'm reading the wiki out loud. The premise sounds like familiar comfort food at first. Riley has a perfect life, her sister envies her, and envy becomes murder. Then Riley wakes up on her choosing day, reborn with a second chance. But the show doesn't play it like a clean reset. It plays it like trauma looping back on itself, like your body remembering what your mind hasn't processed yet. Riley wakes with that raw, panic blink, eyes too wide, breath shallow, and the camera sits uncomfortably close, like it wants you to feel how trapped she feels inside her own skin. It's not just, "oh wow, time travel." It's, "I died and I remember it." And you can tell the actress is making a choice there. She's not doing big melodrama. She's doing that tiny, involuntary flinch when someone touches her arm. The kind of thing you don't fake unless you've either lived something adjacent to it or you've studied humans really well. And then, choosing day. This is where the drama starts flexing its world building without dumping a textbook on you. The show frames choosing day as this bright, ceremonial, socially weaponized event. Everyone's dressed in these clean, symbolic colors, hair pinned, collar straight, smiles practiced. The air feels like perfume and panic. People are watching, judging, ranking. It's basically a marriage market, but with beast bonds and status baked in so deep it feels like religion. Riley is standing in the middle of it with knowledge she shouldn't have yet, and the show lets us sit in that tension. Because if you've ever had to go back into a room where you know someone will hurt you and they're smiling like they're innocent, that's the vibe. The polite lies are suffocating. Now here's the hooky part that got me. Riley's sister doesn't just envy her in a vague, cartoon way. The show makes the sister's envy tactical. She's watching Riley like a predator, and you can feel the calculation under every sweet word. And I'm not saying the sister is misunderstood, she is absolutely doing monstrous things, but the writing is smart enough to show how envy turns into entitlement. She's not thinking, "I want what you have." She's thinking, "You don't deserve what you have, and I'm going to correct the universe." That's a very specific kind of villainy, the kind that doesn't need a tragic backstory, because the tragedy is that they think their bitterness is justice. If you've seen variations of this trope, you think you know what's coming. Sister steals the best match, Riley ends up with the worst. And then we watch Riley rise. But the way Married to the Hidden Dragon King handles that steal is almost intimate. It's not a dramatic cape swoosh moment. It's a social assassination. The sister steps into the center with this calm confidence, like she's always belonged there. And you watch the crowd accept it because they want to accept it. That's a theme the drama keeps poking. People don't just get away with evil because they're clever. They get away with it because society is hungry to believe the version of events that benefits the powerful. And can we talk about the Lion King thing? Because I laughed, quietly, to myself, at how the title Lion King lands like a status brand. It's not just a beastman, it's basically a walking trophy. The story sets him up as the ultimate pick. Strong, revered, photogenic in that "I was born to be worshipped" kind of way. The camera even treats him like a monument. When he's introduced, the framing is low angle, the lighting hits his profile like a sculptor designed him, and the music swells as if the show is saying, "Look, this is what everyone thinks winning looks like." And Riley, with her future memory and her bruised trust, is watching him like she's staring at a locked door she used to think led to safety. Here's a question that kept me watching when I thought I knew the beats. What if the best choice is just the most socially approved cage? Because that's where the show gets deliciously cruel. Riley tries to play the game differently this time, but the sister still manages to intercept the Lion King. And it's not just a theft of a mate, it's a theft of a narrative. The sister positions herself as the deserving one, the chosen one, and Riley is pushed, publicly, into the role of leftovers. The way the crowd reacts is so real, it made my skin prickle. You get those micro expressions, people glancing away, pretending not to see her humiliation, the quiet relief of thank God it's not me. And then, when Riley is left with the so-called weakest beastman alive, the mood turns from celebration to barely concealed mockery. They call him the underground bug. And I know, underground bug. I had a moment where I was like, this is what we're doing? We're really calling the male lead the underground bug? It sounds like an insult a middle schooler yells at you on the playground when they run out of creativity. But the show uses that name like a blunt instrument. Every time someone says it, it's a reminder that this man has been socially reduced to something unworthy of eye contact. The nickname isn't about what he is. It's about what people need him to be so they can feel secure in their hierarchy. The first time Riley sees him up close, the drama doesn't romanticize it. There's no instant sparkle. He's not standing there radiating obvious power. He's quiet, shoulders slightly hunched like he's trained himself to take up less space. There's a guardedness in his eyes, this practiced neutrality of someone who's learned that any reaction will be used against him. The cinematography leans into shadows, into the underside of eaves and stone corridors, like the world itself wants to keep him tucked away. If the Lion King is filmed like a statue in sunlight, the bug is filmed like a secret. And here's where my personal bias kicked in, and I'll admit it. I have a soft spot for characters who have been mislabeled by their community. It hits something in me. Maybe because I grew up watching people get flattened into one story about themselves. And once that story sticks, it's like nobody is even curious anymore. So when Riley looks at him, and you can see her fighting the urge to recoil, not because she thinks he's gross, but because she's aware of the social punishment attached to standing too close, I felt that. I felt it in my chest, that little ache of, please don't be like them. Please don't choose safety over kindness. And Riley doesn't. Not fully. Not perfectly. But she doesn't fold. If you're wondering when the show starts whispering the central secret, when it starts hinting that the underground bug is actually the legendary dragon beast king, it's not with a big obvious wink. It's with these tiny contradictions. The sound design drops into a lower register when he enters a room, like the air pressure changes. The camera lingers one beat too long on his hands when he's restraining himself. There's a moment where someone shoves him, expecting him to stumble, and the actor makes this microscopic adjustment in his balance, like his body is trained, like his reflexes are disciplined. He chooses to fall, basically, and you catch it if you're paying attention. The show is asking you to notice weakness is being performed. That's the kind of detail I live for in dramas, because it respects the viewer. It's not screaming, he's secretly powerful. It's letting you sense it the way Riley senses it. Like something doesn't add up, like the math of him doesn't match the rumor. Now, let me give you one of those signature moments that sealed the vibe for me, because it's shot so vividly I can still picture it. There's a scene early on after the choosing day humiliation where Riley ends up in this quieter corridor away from the crowd. The ceremony noise fades into this muffled, underwater hum. The light is cooler here, bluish, like the warmth of the public celebration can't reach this place. Riley's hands are shaking, not in a cute way, in that adrenal crash way. She presses her palm against the wall like she needs to anchor herself to something solid. And then, from the shadows, he's there, not looming, not dramatically revealed, just present. The underground bug, standing at a respectful distance, eyes lowered, as if he's already decided she'll hate him, and he's giving her space to do it. Riley looks at him, and you can see her trying to reconcile to timelines in her head. The past life, where she trusted the wrong people, and this new life, where she's being forced into a choice she didn't want. Her voice, when she finally speaks, is raw around the edges. And he answers quietly, almost formally, like he's used to being ordered around. The camera cuts to his profile, and you catch a faint mark near his collarbone, like a scar or a seal, and the soundtrack does this low, subtle pulse, like a heartbeat that isn't hers. It's his. The scene smells like stone and cold air in my imagination. It looks damp, like the corridor holds secrets in its pores. And when Riley says something small, like, "I'm sorry," he flinches as if apologies are more dangerous than insults. That's when I went, "Oh, this is going to hurt me, isn't it?" Stay with me, because the drama doesn't just do hidden identity as a gimmick, it uses it to talk about power, shame, and the way people survive by disappearing. The romance setup here is a slow burn built on misrecognition. Riley thinks she's been saddled with the weakest. The world thinks she's been punished. He thinks he's been assigned to someone who will resent him. And there's this quiet irony humming under every interaction, because the audience is being invited to see the shape of the truth before the characters can afford to. That gap creates tension that isn't just sexual or romantic, it's existential. Because if he is the dragon beast king, if he's the thing of legend, then why is he here being kicked around like trash? What happened in this world that forced the strongest being into the role of the weakest? And the show drops hints that it's not just a disguise for fun. It feels like exile. It feels like political survival. It feels like someone powerful had to become invisible to stay alive. The way he watches the crowd isn't the way a timid person watches. It's the way a strategic person watches. He's mapping threats. He's counting exits. When someone laughs at him, his eyes don't flicker with humiliation the way you'd expect. They flicker with assessment. Like, noted, Riley's arc, meanwhile, is not simply becomes badass. It's learns to trust her own perception again. Because being murdered by someone you shared a home with, someone who smiled at you, does something to your internal compass. The drama makes Riley second-guess everything. Every compliment feels like a trap. Every kindness feels like it has a price. So when she's stuck with the underground bug, it's not just a downgrade. It's a social death sentence, which means she's being forced to rebuild her identity from scratch. No more perfect life. No more shiny packaging. Just Riley and the consequences. There's an interesting tonal choice here that I think some viewers might bounce off, and I actually loved it. The show doesn't rush to comfort you. It lets Riley sit in the awkwardness of being judged. It lets scenes breathe just long enough for you to feel the sting. A lot of modern 2026 dramas, especially in this genre lane, have a tendency to sprint from plot point to plot point like they're afraid you'll click away. This one sometimes does the opposite. It holds on Riley's face when she hears a cruel whisper. It holds on the bug's hands curling into fists and then relaxing again. That restraint gives the emotions weight. Now, I can already hear the comment section forming a common take. The sister is pure evil, no nuance, just hate her. And yes, hate her, please. But here's my slightly contrarian read that surprised me as I watched. The sister isn't interesting because she's complicated. She's interesting because she's socially enabled. Her villainy is banal in a way that feels disturbingly real. She doesn't need to twirl a mustache. She needs to be believed. She needs the system to reward her performance. And the system does. That's what makes her scary. Her power isn't her strength. It's how easily the world shrugs and goes along with her version of events. And the Lion King? Another hot take. He's not automatically the prize. The show frames him like the prize, but it also gives him this faint, unsettling rigidity. He's noble, sure, but there's a sense of being curated. Like he's never had to question, who he is because everyone else already decided. And that kind of character can go either way. He can become a genuinely honorable counterpoint, or he can become the embodiment of a system that thinks it's righteous. The drama teases that tension without resolving it early, which is smart because it keeps the triangle energy from being purely about romance. It becomes about ideology, about what kind of power you align with. If you're still thinking this is just going to be a Cinderella flip where Riley gets glow-up revenge and everyone claps, hold on, because the emotional engine is subtler than that. One of my favorite things in the early stretch is the way Riley and the underground bug negotiate space. He doesn't invade her. He doesn't demand her trust. He moves like someone who's learned to be punished for existing. There's a scene where she offers him food, just a simple gesture, and he pauses, like his brain is trying to find the hidden hook. The editing slows down. You can hear the tiniest sound of the ball settling, like the microphone is leaning in with curiosity. And when he finally takes it, he does it carefully, almost reverently, not because the food is special, but because the act of being offered something without cruelty is special. That's a romance detail that lands harder than 1,000 accidental hand touches. And Riley, to her credit, isn't instantly saintly. She has moments where her fear makes her sharp. Her voice tightens, her eyes flash with suspicion. But the show doesn't punish her for that. It treats it as a wound. It lets her be messy. That's important because it makes her compassion feel earned later. She's not kind because she's written to be perfect. She's kind because she's actively choosing not to become like the person who killed her. Every few scenes, the drama also sprinkles in this almost mythic language around dragons, like a bedtime story everyone in this world knows, but nobody expects to be real. The way side characters talk about the Dragon Beast King is half reverence, half fear, like they're describing a storm that chooses who it destroys. And then you look at the underground bug, quietly washing blood off his knuckles in a basin, and you feel the gap between legend and lived reality. That's the show's secret sauce. It keeps asking whether power is something you are, or something you're allowed to be. Let me pull you forward with this, because it's the question that started haunting me mid-watch. If he's the Dragon King, is he hiding from enemies or from himself? The choosing mechanism itself is also used in a pretty psychologically nasty way. It's not just a romantic bonding ritual, it's social sorting. The beast bond determines your status, your protection, your access to resources. So when Riley is matched with the weakest, she's not just losing a husband, she's losing a shield. That adds an undercurrent of danger to every domestic scene. When she walks through town with him, people don't just mock, they get bolder. They step into her path. They test boundaries. You can feel the world trying to correct what it sees as an imbalance. Why should she get to be safe if she chose wrong? And Riley didn't even choose wrong. She was forced. The show's visuals reinforce that shift. Early on, the ceremony is bright, saturated, almost overexposed in places, like a glossy brochure. After Riley is downgraded, the palette cools. There's more grey stone, more muted fabric, more shadows. It's like the world literally dims when you drop in rank. Even the music changes. The celebratory drums and strings fade out, replaced by sparse, tense notes that hang in the air like unanswered questions. Sometimes you get this low, almost subterranean rumble when the bug is on screen, and it's so on the nose that it should be cheesy, but it works because it's mixed subtly. It's not dragon roar. It's something big is sleeping. And can we appreciate the actor playing the underground bug for a second? Because this role lives or dies on restraint. If he plays it too meek, the Hidden King twist feels like a lie. If he plays it too alpha, the disguise makes no sense. He threads that needle by making the character look tired more than weak. Like he's carrying something heavy and choosing not to set it down where people can see. His gaze is often downward, but not submissive, more like he's controlling what parts of himself he reveals. And when he does look up, it's like a door opening a crack. You don't see the whole room. you see enough to be intrigued. Riley's performance, too, deserves credit because reincarnation characters can get annoying fast if they're written as omniscient chess masters. Riley isn't omniscient. She's reactive. She's traumatized. Her intelligence shows up not as superpowers, but as pattern recognition. She notices who benefits. She notices who lies too smoothly. And she notices the bug's inconsistencies. There's a moment where someone insults him in front of her, and she expects him to swallow it, because that's what weak people do in this society. But his jaw tightens, not in anger, in containment. Then he steps back, and you realize he's not retreating because he's scared. He's retreating because if he doesn't, someone might die. That's terrifying. And kind of hot, but like in a please go to therapy way. I also want to linger on the sister dynamic because that's the emotional poison in the roots of this story. Riley's sister isn't just an antagonist. She's a mirror of what Riley could become if she lets resentment define her. The sister wants the Lion King because she wants public confirmation that she is the one worth choosing. And when she gets it, when she stands there with her prize, you can see the hunger doesn't end. It sharpens. She's the type of character who, once she wins, immediately needs someone else to lose harder to make the win feel real. So she keeps targeting Riley even after the match is decided because Riley's existence is still a threat. That's such a real sibling envy thing. Sometimes it's not about what you have. It's about the fact that you exist and they can't stand the comparison. There's a scene not too far in where the sister encounters Riley after the choosing day and does this fake concern routine. And I swear, I wanted to crawl through the screen. She tilts her head, soft smile, voice dripping honey, and the actress nails that specific cruelty of pretending to be kind while twisting the knife. And Riley, this is the part that made me unexpectedly emotional. Riley doesn't just clap back with a sassy one-liner. She goes quiet. Her eyes harden, but she doesn't give the sister the satisfaction of a public scene. It's controlled. It's survival. And I know some viewers want the immediate slap, the immediate revenge. I get it. But the show is doing something more honest. When you've been murdered once, you learn that rage without strategy is just another way to die. Keep watching the bug in those sister scenes because the drama plants some of its best foreshadowing there. He rarely speaks, but his attention is always on the sister. Not because he's attracted. No, it reads like threat evaluation. Like he recognizes something about her. There's a brief shot where the sister's perfume or aura or whatever lingers, and the bug's expression changes for half a second, like he smelled smoke before the fire. That's the kind of micro detail that makes me trust a show, because it's telling you the story is engineered, not improvised. And then there's the question of why Riley's past life was perfect in the first place. The drama hints, without over-explaining, that Riley's perfection was partly a performance she didn't know she was doing. She was good at fitting the expected role, good at being the kind, chosen woman, and that made her sister's envy metastasize. In the second life, Riley is forced out of that role, and the show uses that to explore identity. Who are you when the status props are kicked away? Who are you when your social shield is a man everyone laughs at? Here's where the romance starts sneaking up on you. It's not fireworks yet. It's tiny, cumulative trust. Riley starts noticing that the bug never touches her without permission. That he positions himself between her and danger even when it earns him more bruises. That he listens. Actually listens. There's a scene where Riley is speaking and she expects to be interrupted. Because powerful men in this world interrupt women like it's breathing, and he doesn't. He just holds her gaze, quiet, steady. And I felt myself relax. Which is wild, because it's a fictional man on a screen. But it did something to my nervous system. That's when I realized the show is deliberately building intimacy through safety rather than dominance. And yes, I know what some people will say. But he's secretly the Dragon King, so it's still power. Sure, but the way he uses or doesn't use that power matters. The show is not just doing weak too strong. It's doing strong chooses gentleness. That's different. Let me rehook you right here, because this is the point where I started leaning forward. The drama begins implying that Riley's second chance isn't just fate being kind. Someone or something may have wanted her back at that exact moment. The way the choosing day reset happens feels suspicious. It's presented like destiny, but the camera language makes it feel like intervention. Like the universe has an opinion. There are these brief visual motifs, flickers of gold light, a breath of wind at the wrong time, a sound cue that's almost like a distant wing beat that could be purely aesthetic. Or could be the show quietly telling you there's a larger force behind Riley's rebirth. And if that's true, it ties beautifully into the Dragon King idea. Dragons in a lot of mythologies are guardians, judges, catastrophes, saviors. If he's hiding, maybe the world is in a state where guardians have to crawl underground. The social politics start tightening too. You get the sense that Beast Kings aren't just romantic labels, they're power centers. The Lion King represents one faction, visible, celebrated, tied to tradition. The Dragon King, if he exists, represents something older, wilder, maybe threatening to the established order. So Riley being bound, even accidentally, to the hidden Dragon King isn't just a romantic twist. It's a political earthquake waiting to happen. There's also this delicious irony in how people treat Riley once she's downgraded. They feel free to be cruel, and in doing so they reveal themselves. That's one of my favorite narrative functions of a status fall. It's like turning on a black light. Suddenly you see who was only kind because it was convenient. Riley starts clocking it. You can see her mentally filing names away. Not for petty revenge, necessarily, but for survival. And that's when the show's momentum starts building, because you realize Riley isn't just going to endure. She's going to learn the system from the underside. Now, I need to talk about pacing for a second, because this is where the drama either hooks you for real or loses you. The early episodes, if we're calling them episodes, because the structure feels like that, move with a confident rhythm. The murdery bird-choosing day chain is fast enough to be gripping, but not so fast that the emotional consequences get skipped. Then it settles into a slower, more domestic tension. Some viewers will call that a lull. I didn't. I thought it was the show doing trust building as suspense. Because every calm moment between Riley and the bug is charged with, how long before the world takes this away? How long before the sister strikes again? How long before the bug's true nature leaks out? And the show is constantly teasing that leak. The bug has these moments where something ancient flickers through his composure. Like when he hears the word dragon spoken as a joke and his eyes go distant, like he's remembering a life people would rather turn into myth. Or when he's alone and the camera catches him standing unnaturally still, like a statue that could move if it wanted. The sound design in those moments is gorgeous. It strips away the ambient noise, leaving this quiet ring, like you're hearing the space between heartbeats. It makes you feel like you're intruding on something sacred. Riley, meanwhile, is making choices that feel small but are actually radical in her context. She defends him publicly once, just with a sentence, nothing dramatic, and the room goes cold. You can feel how taboo it is to confer dignity on someone marked as lesser. That's when you realize the show is also about complicity. It's about how cruelty is maintained not just by villains, but by bystanders who don't want to be next. I will say, though, the drama occasionally flirts with making the sister too omnipotent. There are moments where her schemes land a little too cleanly, like the plot is helping her. But the performances sell it because the sister is portrayed as someone who has practiced manipulation her whole life. She's not improvising, she's executing. She knows which elders to flatter, which rumors to plant, which tears to display. And the show smartly shows that she's not universally beloved, she's tolerated by the powerful and adored by the shallow. That distinction matters. There's a scene where Riley catches her sister's expression slipping for just a second, like the mask cracks, and it's chilling. It's this flash of contempt, so pure it looks almost calm. And then the smile returns. That's the kind of acting detail that makes you want to rewind, because it tells you the real sister is always there, right behind the performance. Another thing the show does well is physical proximity as storytelling. Riley and the bug are often framed with space between them early on. Doorways, pillars, shadows. Then slowly, the blocking shifts. They start sharing the same light source. They start sitting on the same side of a table. Their silences become less awkward and more companionable. It's not just romance, it's alignment. The camera is literally moving them into the same frame, and you feel the trust growing before they even articulate it. Let me tug you forward again, because this is where it gets addictive. The more Riley treats him like a person, the more dangerous it becomes for him to keep pretending to be powerless. Because you start to see the cost of his restraint. He gets hurt. He gets blamed. He absorbs punishments meant for her. And Riley notices. There are moments where she tends to an injury, hands careful, breath shaky. And you can see her fighting tears, not because she's suddenly in love, but because she recognizes a pattern. Someone suffering for her while others watch. It triggers something from her past life. And the show lets that trauma surface in a way that isn't melodramatic. It's in the way she swallows hard, in the way she can't meet his eyes for a second, because she doesn't want him to see how close she is to breaking. The bug, in that moment, does something that cracked me open a little. He doesn't say, "It's fine." He doesn't dismiss it. He simply says something like, "You don't owe me anything." And the line hits because it's the opposite of what this world teaches. This world teaches that everything is transactional. Your bond determines your worth. Your status determines your safety. And here is this worthless man offering non-transactional protection. It's quietly revolutionary. I also want to point out how the show uses rumor as a weapon. People talk about Riley like she can't hear them, like she's furniture. They talk about the bug like he's an insect under glass. And Riley learns to weaponize that invisibility. If they don't see her as a threat, she can observe. She can learn. That's where the revenge fantasy becomes smarter. It's not immediate payback. It's long-term chess. And while all this is happening, the Lion King is in the background like a bright, looming question mark. The sister has him, but does she have him? Because he's not a mindless prize. The show hints that he notices Riley's fall. Maybe with guilt, maybe with curiosity, maybe with something else. There are glances. There's a moment where his jaw tightens when someone mocks Riley too loudly, like a sense of honor is being tested. And I love that the drama doesn't rush to make him either villain or savior. It keeps him ambiguous enough to feel like a real person caught in a system. At this point, I need to confess something slightly embarrassing. I got emotionally invested in the bug's silence. Like, I started anticipating his micro-reactions the way you anticipate a jump scare. When the scene would get tense, I'd find myself watching his hands. Because the show trains you to. It teaches you that his body speaks before he does. And that's such a satisfying way to build a hidden king character. It's not about him suddenly announcing, "I am the dragon." It's about the audience slowly realizing he's been holding back a storm with sheer will. And the show teases that storm with just enough visual language to make you itch for the reveal. Reflections linger oddly when he passes. Candles flutter. A low wind seems to follow him in enclosed spaces. The editing inserts these quick, almost subconscious flashes. Scales? A winged silhouette? But it's never clear enough to be a literal transformation. It's more like the show is letting the myth bleed into reality around him. If you're waiting for the story to pivot from social humiliation into something more dangerous, it does, and it does it in a way that feels inevitable rather than random. The mid-stretch tension builds around the idea that Riley's sister can't just let Riley exist. And Riley, instead of charging at her sister head-on, starts collecting leverage. She starts asking questions about how choosing day bonds are recorded, who oversees them, what rules can be bent. The show frames Riley's intelligence as patience, which is honestly refreshing in a genre that sometimes treats smart female-led as talks fast and wins arguments. Riley's smart because she shuts up and listens when people reveal themselves. Meanwhile, the bug starts revealing not his power, but his principles. He refuses certain commands. He steps in when someone is truly endangered. He chooses restraint even when it costs him. And slowly, Riley begins to suspect that weakest beastman alive is an act that serves someone else's agenda. The show makes Riley's suspicion feel like an emotional risk. Because if she's wrong, she's just projecting hope onto a man who will eventually disappoint her. And if she's right, then she's living with a dragon in human skin. I'm going to stop right here on a breath, because the next stretch is where the drama starts tightening its grip around the secret, and the sisters' escalating schemes, and the way the bug's mask begins to slip isn't a single moment, it's a sequence of pressures that force him closer and closer to the line he's been refusing to cross, and Riley, being Riley, steps toward that line with him, even though every survival instinct she has is screaming that getting close to power is how you get burned. And that's what makes the next run of the story so tense, because Riley's not just falling for a guy, she's edging closer to the kind of power that got her killed in the first place. The show keeps putting her in these moments where the safest move would be to keep her head down, play humble, accept her punishment, and just survive. But Riley is the kind of protagonist who survives by refusing to let the world tell her what she's allowed to want. And honestly, that's what I loved about her. She's not fearless. She's brave in the annoying, inconvenient way. The way that makes other people's lives harder because it exposes their cowardice. There's a stretch where her sister starts escalating the social pressure in this really subtle, insidious way. It's not all daggers and poison right away. It's gossip, it's resource denial, it's little humiliations that are designed to wear Riley down. Like, suddenly Riley's household allotment is accidentally reduced. Suddenly someone forgets to deliver medicine. Suddenly Riley is invited to an event as a joke, and the room goes quiet when she enters, like everyone is waiting to see how low she'll kneel. And the show's direction is so good at making those moments feel like a trap closing. The camera tightens. The sound goes thin. You can hear fabrics rustle, like even clothing is judging her. And the underground bug, this man who's supposed to be the weakest thing walking, keeps absorbing the impact. He takes the hits that are meant for her because he knows the world won't punish him for being hurt. He's already written off. That's the cruelty of it. When someone is socially dehumanized, violence against them becomes invisible. And the show doesn't just say that, it shows it. A shove that no one reacts to. A bruise no one asks about. A snide comment that gets laughter instead of discomfort. It's bleak and it's effective. One of the most telling choices the drama makes is how it frames Riley's anger. She doesn't rage at the bug for being weak. She rages at the system for making weakness a death sentence. There's a moment where she watches someone spit near his feet. Near, not on, because they're still pretending to be civilized, and Riley's face changes. It's like you can see her past life self, the one who was trying to be perfect, peel away. She doesn't explode. She just remembers. And that memory hardens her. Here's what pulled me deeper at this point. The show starts making it clear that Riley's sister didn't just steal the Lion King because she wanted him. She stole him because she wanted to control the story of who is worthy. The Lion King is basically a walking stamp of approval. If she has him, she can rewrite the family hierarchy. She can become the perfect one and turn Riley into a cautionary tale. That's why the sister can't leave Riley alone. Riley's existence contradicts the sister's narrative. And narratives, in this world, are power. And speaking of power, the bug's restraint starts becoming less romantic and more ominous. Because the more he holds back, the more you start to ask, what is he holding back from? The world? Or himself? There's a moment where he's threatened, really threatened, and the scene plays out like a match hovering near gasoline. Someone corners Riley, someone grabs her arm, and you see the bug's eyes snap up. The soundtrack drops into this low, throbbing note, and for half a second the lighting seems to flicker. Not in a supernatural special effects way, more like the film itself is flinching. He steps forward, and the air shifts. The guy who grabbed Riley suddenly looks confused, like his instincts are screaming at him to run even though his brain doesn't know why. And then the bug does the most terrifying thing possible. He smiles. Not warmly, not cruelly, just a small, controlled lift of the corner of his mouth, like he's acknowledging a truth the other person can't see. And then he speaks in a voice that sounds the same but feels different. Lower, steadier, older. It's not a declaration of identity, it's a warning delivered with the calm of someone who has ended fights before they began. If you're still with me, this is the point where the drama quietly pivots from reincarnation revenge romance to, oh, there's a monster sleeping under the floorboards, and everyone keeps tapping the wood with their stupid little shoes. The show also gets craftier with Riley's perspective here. She starts noticing that the bug knows things he shouldn't. Not just like he's smart, like he's been around. There's this conversation where someone mentions an ancient treaty or an old battle like it's a legend, and the bug corrects a detail casually without thinking and then stops, as if he said too much. Riley catches it. Her eyes narrow just slightly, and the camera stays on her face long enough for you to feel that thought forming. Who are you? But here's what I appreciate. Riley doesn't jump straight to, he's the Dragon King. She doesn't get handed the answer by the script. She approaches it like someone who's been betrayed, cautiously, suspiciously, testing, watching. Her trust isn't a faucet you turn on. It's a door you open inch by inch. And even then you keep your hand on the knob. There's a quiet scene that I think is one of the emotional cores of the whole drama. It's not a big plot twist. It's just Riley waking up from a nightmare. She sits up too fast, breath ragged, hand pressed to her throat as if she can still feel the moment she died in her previous life. The room is dim. The air looks cold. And the bug is already awake, sitting on the floor near the door like a guard dog who refuses to take up the bed. That detail wrecked me a little, because it tells you he's been doing this for a while. He doesn't sleep deeply. He sleeps like someone on watch. Riley tries to calm herself without making noise, like she's ashamed of being scared, and he doesn't ask questions. He doesn't demand an explanation. He just shifts slightly, enough for her to know she's not alone. And after a minute, he says something simple, like, "You're safe." The line shouldn't work, because in this world, she's objectively not safe. But it works because he believes it, or he wants to. And Riley's eyes fill, and she blinks it back. And I swear to you, I had that weird moment where you don't cry but your throat does that painful tie thing. That's how you know a drama has you. Let me snag your attention again right here, because this is where the sister's obsession starts taking on a more dangerous shape. She begins acting like she's not just trying to win a man, she's trying to erase Riley's future entirely. The show starts hinting that the sister's reach is bigger than Riley initially thought. It's not just family politics. It's connections, officials, maybe even spiritual authorities tied to the choosing system. And that's when Riley's second life starts feeling less like a gift and more like a battlefield with invisible landmines. Riley realizes she can't just avoid her sister. Avoidance is what got her killed last time. This time, she has to understand the machinery behind the cruelty. And in the middle of all that, the Lion King and the sister's relationship begins to show cracks. Not in a soap opera, he's cheating way, but in a foundational mismatch way. The sister wants status, control, and validation. The Lion King seems to want order, legacy, and the appearance of honor. Those can overlap, but they can also collide hard. There's a particular kind of tension when a man believes he's righteous and a woman believes she's entitled, and both of them think the world should applaud. The show doesn't hammer this with dialogue. It uses glances, public etiquette, Little disagreements that get smoothed over too quickly. You can feel the friction under the polished surface. And here's another slightly unexpected thing. The drama doesn't make the Lion King a cartoon. He's not just the stolen prize. There is stiffness to him that feels like he's also trapped. Trapped by expectations, by tradition, by the role he was born to play. I'm not saying feel sorry for him. I'm saying the show is smarter when it treats even the simple characters like humans. Because it means when things inevitably shift, it's not just plot. It's psychology. Now, the underground bug's hidden identity, this legendary dragon beast king thing, hangs over everything like a storm cloud you can taste in the air. And the show uses that tension almost like a heartbeat. Every time the bug is pushed, the beat gets louder. Every time Riley is threatened, the beat speeds up. It's not just when will the reveal happen, it's what will it cost when it happens? Because once a secret like that is out, you can't put it back in the box. And Riley knows what it's like to be targeted by someone who wants to take everything. If the world finds out her mate is the Dragon King, Riley's danger doesn't decrease. It multiplies. There's a moment where Riley is basically forced into a public situation. Again, not saying exactly how because the show plays with different social arenas. But think of a formal gathering where you can't refuse without losing face, and she walks in with the bug. The room reacts like someone brought mud into a temple. People's smiles freeze. The sister's eyes flicker with delight because she's about to watch Riley be humiliated again. And the bug's posture changes. Just a fraction. Like a spine straightening. Like he's remembering what it feels like to be looked at as something other than trash. The director makes such a meal out of this. The camera cuts from faces to hands to feet. You see how people subtly step away, how they angle their bodies to exclude. And Riley, instead of shrinking, steps closer to the bug. She doesn't cling. She aligns. She stands beside him like she's making a statement without speaking. And the bug glances at her. Quickly, almost like he can't afford to look too long. And something soft crosses his face like gratitude mixed with fear. I'm going to pause for a self-aware aside because I need you to understand the kind of person I am. I am embarrassingly susceptible to that she stands with him against the room trope. It's like catnip to my brain. I could pretend I'm above it, but I'm not. Put to characters in a hostile ballroom with whispered cruelty swirling around them. Have one of them quietly choose the other, and I'm done. You've got me. I'll watch 12 more hours. The show builds on that alignment by giving Riley small wins that aren't about outsmarting everyone instantly. Sometimes the win is just not flinching. Sometimes the win is refusing to apologize for existing. Sometimes it's offering the bug a seat at the table and daring people to comment. Those are victories that matter because in a rigid society, dignity is political. As the tension ramps, you start noticing how the bug interacts with the physical world. When he's alone, he moves with a different ease. When he's watched, he becomes smaller. That contrast is heartbreaking. It suggests he's been performing weakness so long it's become a second skin. And Riley begins to see both versions. That's where intimacy starts. Not in kisses, not in declarations. In recognition. In being seen. Here's the rehook that kept me clicking through the next batch of scenes. The drama starts implying that the choosing bond itself might have rules people don't fully understand or might have been tampered with. Because Riley starts encountering inconsistencies in how bonds are recorded, how beasts are ranked, who has access to the true archives. And it's framed like a mystery under the Romans. The show's not just asking, who is the Dragon King? It's asking, who benefits from him being hidden? And that opens up the world. Suddenly, you're not just dealing with a jealous sister. You're dealing with a power structure that might have been built on suppressing certain bloodlines, certain beasts, certain truths. There's a scene where Riley overhears officials talking in that huff-coded bureaucratic language. And you can tell the show is playing with the idea that weakest beastman might not even be a real category. It might be a label assigned to keep someone contained. And that makes Riley's anger sharpen into something purposeful. Because she's not just fighting for herself anymore. She's fighting against an entire lie. The sister, sensing Riley's spine growing, shifts tactics. She stops relying only on public humiliation and starts aiming for isolation. She tries to cut Riley off from anyone who might help her. Friends, servants, healers, anyone with information. And you feel the claustrophobia of that. Riley walks through spaces that used to be neutral and now feel hostile. Even the air feels watched. The cinematography leans into narrow corridors, door frames, latticed shadows across Riley's face. It's like the world is a cage made of etiquette. The bug's response to this is fascinating. He doesn't suddenly become a loud protector. He becomes a quiet strategist. He starts positioning himself in ways that keep Riley safer without drawing attention. He learns the sister's patterns. He anticipates ambushes. And there's this sense that he's been doing this kind of survival math for a long time. The way he watches rooftops, the way he listens to footsteps, the way he reacts to a change in wind direction. It's subtle, but it accumulates into a portrait of someone who has lived through threats bigger than petty social cruelty. Riley starts pushing him, gently. Not tell me your secret in a melodramatic way. More like, why do you move like that? How do you know that? What happened to you? And every time she gets close, he shuts down. Not with anger, with fear. And that fear reads as protective. Like he believes the truth will destroy her. This is where the drama's emotional manipulation gets very effective because it places the couple's intimacy directly in conflict with safety. In most romances, the obstacle is miscommunication or external rivals. Here, the obstacle is reality. The truth is dangerous. Love is dangerous. Being chosen by a dragon is not a fairy tale. It's a target on your back. And then, in the middle of all this, you get moments of weird tenderness that sneak up on you. The bug doing something mundane, like fixing a broken latch. Riley watching him with this soft confusion, like she's never seen a man do something for her without expecting a reward. The show holds on those mundane acts like they're sacred. Because for Riley, they are. I have to shout out the music again here, because it's doing a lot of emotional work without being obnoxious. When Riley and the bug share quiet moments, the score uses these delicate, almost hesitant motifs, like a melody that's afraid to take up space. But when the sister appears, the music sharpens, introduces higher strings or a brittle chime that feels like glass. And when the bug is threatened, you get that low rumble again, like thunder under the floor. It's a simple sonic language, but it's effective. You always know, emotionally, what kind of scene you're in before anyone speaks. Let me pull you forward once more, because this is the part where the show starts making a promise. The dragon is not going to stay buried forever, and when he surfaces, it won't be because he wants glory. It'll be because Riley leaves him no other choice. They're a pivotal sequence. I'm being careful not to pin it to a specific episode count that feels like the first real crack in his disguise. Riley is put in a situation where her survival is not guaranteed. The sister orchestrates something that looks proper on the surface but has teeth underneath. Riley is surrounded by people who would not mourn her. The bug is there, but he's limited by the role he's playing. If he intervenes too strongly, the lie collapses. If he doesn't intervene, Riley could die. That's the choice. And the show milks that choice in the best way. It doesn't rush. It lets you sit in the inevitability. Riley's eyes dart. She's calculating, trying to find a way out without triggering a full confrontation. The sister is watching with that gleaming patience of someone who believes they've already won. The Lion King is present in some capacity, and you can feel his discomfort growing like his honor is being dragged into mud. And the bug stands very still, hands at his sides, face unreadable. Then something happens. Something small, but irreversible. The bug's control slips for one heartbeat. Maybe his eyes flash. Maybe the air shifts. Maybe you hear a sound that isn't human, like a low resonance. The camera doesn't show a full transformation or anything like that. It shows reactions. It shows people suddenly going quiet, like a predator just entered the room and everyone's prey instincts kicked in. The sister's smile falters. Riley's breath catches. The Lion King's head turns sharply, as if he senses a rival he never imagined. And the bug? He recovers. He forces himself back into the weak posture. But now the audience has tasted it. The world has tasted it. You can't untaste it. That's when the show's tension level jumps, because from that point on, someone is going to start pulling at the thread. Riley, after that, becomes almost obsessive in her need to understand him. Not because she's nosy, because she's afraid. If he's that powerful, and he's hiding, then the danger around them is bigger than she thought. And the show gives you this lovely, painful scene where Riley tries to ask him directly, gently, late at night, in the quiet of their shared space. And he refuses. He doesn't lie, exactly. He just says something like, "It's better if you don't know." And Riley's face falls in a way that feels like betrayal, even though it's not meant as betrayal. Because for Riley, don't know is how she died last time. Not knowing her sister's real intentions. Not seeing the knife coming. This is where I started yelling at my screen a little. Not in an "I hate this" way, more in a "please, you too, stop hurting each other with silence" way. But also, I get it. The bug's whole existence is built on containment. He believes the truth destroys things. He believes he is destruction. And that's where the dragon metaphor starts feeling deeper than just cool beast. The show seems to be saying, what if your gift is also what you fear most about yourself? What if you learned to survive by shrinking, but shrinking is also slowly killing you? The sister, of course, interprets the crack in his disguise as an opportunity. She becomes more curious about Riley's mate. She starts digging, prying, sending people to watch them. And Riley can feel the surveillance tightening. There are scenes where Riley walks through town and you notice people lingering too long, glancing too quickly away, repeating her words later. The paranoia is palpable. The director uses shallow depth of field to make the background blur, like threats are always present but indistinct. It's a clever visual representation of anxiety. You never know which face matters until it's too late. And Riley starts adapting. She stops speaking freely in public. She chooses words carefully. She learns to perform innocence. And that performance is such a sad echo of her past life, perfect self. The difference is, now she knows it's a mask. She's using it, not being used by it. There's a turning point where Riley makes a choice that, to me, is the moment she truly commits to this new life. She decides she's not going to chase the Lion King back. She's not going to try to reclaim the best match just to restore her social safety. Instead, she chooses to build safety with the person she has, even if the world laughs. And I know some viewers might be like, well, yeah, because he's secretly the Dragon King. But here's the thing, Riley doesn't know that yet, not fully. She's choosing him in the dark. That matters. That's character. And the bug notices. You can see it in the way he watches her when she's not looking. There's this softness that creeps into his expression, like he's allowing himself to want something. And then he immediately clamps down on it, like wanting is dangerous. That push-pull is the romance. It's not banter. It's not jealousy games. It's two people trying to decide whether they're allowed to be happy in a world that punishes happiness. Let me hook you again, because the next development is where the story's revenge angle starts to sharpen into something more satisfying. Riley begins setting traps that don't look like traps. She starts using the sister's arrogance against her. The sister is so convinced Riley is beneath her that she doesn't imagine Riley could orchestrate anything. So Riley does what smart survivors do. She lets the predator think it's in control. She feeds it just enough confidence to get sloppy. And the drama shows this through small social maneuvers. Riley agreeing too easily. Riley stepping aside at the right time. Riley speaking to the right person with just the right amount of humility. It's delicious because it's not cartoonish. It's realistic manipulation, the kind that looks like obedience until it's too late. And the bug, watching this, begins to see Riley not as a burden to protect, but as a partner. That shift is subtle, but it's there. He starts asking her what she wants. He starts waiting for her cue before stepping in. It's like he's learning to trust her agency. And that's incredibly sexy in a way that isn't about muscles. It's about respect. I also want to linger on how the show depicts the bond between Beastman and chosen partner, because it's not purely romantic. It's spiritual, social, almost biological. The drama suggests that the bond changes your senses, your instincts. Riley becomes more attuned to the bug's moods. She notices when he's tense before he speaks. She feels uneasy when he's hurt even if she doesn't see it. The show frames it like a thread between them, unseen but tugging. And that gives the romance this eerie intimacy. Like they're connected in a way they can't fully control. Which makes the secrecy even more painful. Because how do you hide something from someone you're bonded to? How do you keep your true nature buried when your partner can feel your fear? There's a particular scene, again, not pinning exact details as absolute fact, but the show frames it like this, where the bug is alone, outside, under open sky. The moonlight hits him in a way that makes his skin look almost metallic for a second. He's breathing hard, like he's fighting something inside his chest. And the sound design gives you this faint crackle, like distant fire. He clenches his hands, and for a blink, you think you see something like scales along his knuckles. Not fully, not CGI screaming at you. More like the light is revealing what's always been there. Then he hides his hands again. He bows his head like he's ashamed. And you realize the disguise isn't just social. It's physical discipline. He's holding his body in a form that isn't natural. That's when I felt this wave of sympathy for him that surprised me. Because a lot of Hidden King male leads are written as smug, like they're enjoying the deception. This guy isn't enjoying anything. He's enduring. And that shifts the tone of the fantasy. It becomes less, wow, secret prince, and more, wow, secret survivor. Meanwhile, the sister's obsession with the Lion King starts to read differently. She has him, but she's not satisfied. She wants Riley to see her with him. She wants Riley to regret. She wants Riley to crawl. And when Riley doesn't, the sister's cruelty turns sharper. She starts trying to humiliate Riley in ways that attack her dignity directly. The show gets darker here, and I appreciate that it doesn't pretend these dynamics are harmless. It shows how women can weaponize social structures against each other when those structures give them no other sanctioned power. And the Lion King, to his credit or his detriment, starts noticing the sister's ugliness. Whether he confronts it openly or not, the discomfort is there. He's watching her, and sometimes you see his eyes narrow, like he's reevaluating. And that reevaluation matters, because the Lion King isn't just a person, he's a symbol. If the symbol starts doubting the sister, her stolen legitimacy begins to wobble. The show also plays with the idea that Riley's past life perfectness made people assume she'd always be okay, like she was too polished to be vulnerable. In the second life, Riley is forced into vulnerability publicly, and the world responds with cruelty. That says something ugly about how societies treat fallen women. The show doesn't sermonize about it, but it doesn't shy away either. It makes you sit with it. I'll admit, there was a point where I wanted Riley to just go scorched earth already. I'm human. I love a good dramatic payoff. But the drama's slower burn actually made the stakes feel real. Because in real power systems, you don't win by yelling. You win by surviving long enough to find leverage. And then you get this moment, one of those moments that feels like the drama tightening a knot, where Riley realizes her sister isn't just jealous. She's terrified. Terrified that Riley's existence proves something about her. Terrified that she can't ever be enough unless Riley is destroyed. And that realization changes how Riley sees the conflict. It's no longer my sister wants my life. It's my sister will never stop. Which means Riley can't just defend. She has to dismantle. Let me pull you forward again, because this next shift is the one that made me go, okay, we're really doing this. The story starts making the Dragon King's legend feel less like Romance lore and more like a looming war story. You begin hearing more whispers about the Dragon Beast King in the background. People talk about him like he's a myth used to scare children into obedience, but there's always a tremor under the joke. And as those whispers increase, the bug becomes more restless. He starts disappearing for short periods. He returns with dirt on his sleeves, with a distant look in his eyes. The show doesn't spoon-feed what he's doing. It just gives you the impression that he's dealing with something underground, literally or figuratively. Riley notices, and instead of demanding answers in a dramatic blow-up, she starts tracking patterns. She waits. She observes. That's her survival skill. And when she finally confronts him, it's not a scream. It's quiet. It's a question asked with trembling courage. Are you leaving me? Because that's her fear. Not that he's powerful. That he'll vanish like everyone else who's offered her safety. And the bug, this is where the actor really shines. Looks like he's been stabbed. Not because she's accusing him, but because she's admitting she cares. His eyes soften, and for a second you see longing, and then it's replaced by guilt. He says something like, I can't. Not I won't. I can't. And Riley hears what he doesn't say. She hears the burden. The show loves these almost confessions that stop right before the truth. It's frustrating, yes, but it's also emotionally accurate for people who have lived by secrecy. You don't just reveal yourself because someone asks nicely. You reveal yourself when the cost of hiding becomes greater than the cost of being seen. And the sister is doing her best to make that cost unbearable. There's a sequence where Riley is publicly challenged or tested, again, keeping it moderate, not spelling every late outcome. And the sister sets it up so that if Riley refuses, she looks cowardly. And if Riley accepts, she gets hurt. It's that kind of trap. The show frames it like a ritualized cruelty disguised as tradition. The crowd watches, hungry. The sister watches, gleeful. The Lion King watches, conflicted. And the bug watches with a terrifying stillness. Riley steps forward anyway. Because Riley is not going to be humiliated into passivity. And as she faces the test, you see her hands shake. You see her swallow fear. The camera stays close, so close you can see the sheen of sweat at her hairline. And then, just as things tilt toward disaster, the bug moves. It's fast, not flashy. Fast like a predator. And for a split second, the show lets you see him as he truly is, not fully revealed, but enough. Enough to make your stomach drop. The moment is shot with this sudden clarity. The background sound dulls. The music cuts out. You hear a sharp inhale from the crowd. You see the sister's eyes widen. You see the Lion King's posture stiffen, as if he's facing a rival beast. And the bug's expression is no longer neutral. It's cold, protective, ancient. And then he clamps it down again. He forces the mask back on. But the room has felt it. Riley has felt it. And Riley, instead of being terrified of him, looks at him like she's finally found something solid in a world of lies. That's the moment their relationship shifts into something deeper than convenience. Because Riley's trust isn't about him being harmless. It's about him being controlled. He is dangerous, and he chooses not to be dangerous to her. That's intimacy. At this point, I need to throw in one more personal reaction, because I didn't expect it. I found myself feeling oddly protective of the bug's secrecy. Like, part of me wanted Riley to know everything, but part of me also understood why he couldn't just say, "Hi, I'm the Dragon King." Because the second he does, Riley stops being a person in the eyes of the world and becomes an asset, a hostage, a political object. And Riley has already lived a life where she was valued for the role she played rather than the person she was. I didn't want that for her again. And that's the kind of tension the drama is playing with, truth as liberation versus truth as weapon. The show's editing rhythm also gets sharper here. Earlier scenes lingered. Now, cuts come faster during confrontations. The sisters' scenes become more clipped, more efficient, like her cruelty is escalating. The Bug's scenes oscillate between slow, heavy stillness and sudden bursts of movement. It keeps you slightly off balance, which mirrors Riley's emotional state. She's never fully sure what kind of day she's going to have. A day where she can breathe, or a day where she has to fight. Let me hook you again, because the next phase is where the romance stops being only emotional and starts carrying real consequences. Riley begins making choices that publicly bind her to him. Choices she can't take back even if she wanted to. This is where you get scenes of Riley refusing offers that would save her socially if she just abandoned him. People hint that she could petition for a rematch or appeal to an authority or claim the bond was invalid. And Riley doesn't. She chooses the so-called weakest beastman not because it's easy, but because it's right. And every time she chooses him, the sisters' rage intensifies because Riley is refusing to play the sisters' script. Riley is refusing to be desperate for the Lion King. She's refusing to validate the sisters' theft as meaningful. And the Bug, in response, starts to soften toward Riley in ways that are small but seismic for him. He starts speaking more. He starts sharing little pieces of himself, memories that aren't labeled as memories, just comments that hint at history. He starts letting his guard drop around her in private. There's a scene where he laughs very quietly at something Riley says, almost like the sound surprises him. Like he forgot he could do that. And Riley looks at him like she's seeing sunlight for the first time. The chemistry between them is built on those moments. Not on flashy flirting, on relief. But because this is a drama and the universe hates peace, the sisters' next move is to attack the Bug directly. If she can't break Riley's spirit, she can break Riley's protector. And the show leans into the cruelty of that by showing how easy it is to hurt someone the world doesn't care about. The sister frames it as discipline, as order, as maintaining proper hierarchy. It's the kind of evil that wears a uniform. The Bug endures it for a while. And watching him endure is honestly hard. Because it's not just physical. It's humiliation. It's being treated as less than. And Riley is forced to watch because the system wants her to learn her place. But Riley doesn't learn her place. She learns her enemy. There are moments where Riley steps between the Bug and an aggressor, again, not pinning exact mechanics, and the room reacts with shock, like she's done something obscene. And Riley's voice shakes, but she doesn't move. And the Bug, behind her, looks like he's about to break. Not because he's weak. Because if he lets her protect him, he's letting her step into danger meant for him. And he can't bear that. This is where the show's relationship dynamic becomes genuinely compelling. They're both trying to protect each other, but the methods clash. Riley wants to fight openly because she's tired of being prey. The Bug wants to hide because he knows what happens when dragons are seen. And that clash creates friction that feels earned, not manufactured. And yes, there's romantic tension layered over it. There are moments where Riley is close enough to feel his breath, where she notices the heat radiating from him in a way that isn't normal, where she catches a scent on him that isn't just sweat, something sharper, like smoke after rain. The show uses sensory cues to hint at dragoness without turning it into a literal, he breathes fire gag. It's more like he's not entirely of the same species. He feels different. The sister, meanwhile, grows increasingly reckless. She starts making moves that risk exposing herself because her obsession is overriding her caution. And that's when Riley's patience begins to pay off. Riley has been watching, collecting, learning, and now she begins to position the sisters' lies where they can be seen by people who matter. Not by shouting, by letting the sister trip over her own arrogance. There's a delicious scene where the sister tries to publicly shame Riley, and Riley responds with calm politeness that is basically a trap disguised as respect. The sister takes the bait, overplays her hand, reveals too much. And you see a couple of background figures exchange glances. Tiny, but significant. That's how power shifts in this world. Not with courtroom speeches. With looks. With doubt. With the first crack in a reputation. And the bug sees Riley doing this, and you can tell he's impressed. The actor plays it with this subtle widening of the eyes, like he didn't realize she could be dangerous in that way. It's the first time you sense he might actually trust her not just emotionally, but strategically. And that matters. Because if he's going to reveal his true identity, he needs a partner who can survive the fallout. Let me stop here on another tension point, because the next sentence is where I want to go deeper into the way the show layers the Dragon King mythology over Riley's revenge plot, and how the Lion King starts becoming less of a romantic rival and more of a moral measuring stick for the entire society, and Riley, standing between a glittering public power and a buried ancient one, begins to realize that a second life isn't about correcting one betrayal. It's about choosing what kind of world she's willing to live in when the truth finally comes up for air and breathe. Because that's the reframing the drama pulls off in its middle to late stretch, and it's the thing that elevated it for me from fun trope machine to actually thoughtful genre piece. The Lion King stops functioning as the guy Riley lost, and starts functioning as the embodiment of everything the society calls legitimate. He's the visible power, the approved power, the kind that gets songs written about it, that gets seated at the high table, that gets forgiven for its rigidity because it looks the part. And the dragon, the thing living under the floorboards, the thing everyone jokes about while quietly making warding gestures, becomes the illegitimate power, the buried power, the truth nobody wants dug up, because digging it up means admitting the whole hierarchy was built on a lie that had to be shoved underground. That's a really elegant piece of structural thinking for a genre that often just wants to give you a sassy heroine and a jealous sibling. And the show doesn't explain it out loud, which is why it works. It lets you feel it in the geography. Notice how much of the Lion King's screen time happens in open, elevated, sunlit spaces, terraces, halls with high windows, courtyards where everyone can see him. Now notice where the bug lives, works, sleeps, hides. Low ceilings, stone, half-light, places under things. The production design is arguing with itself on purpose. Height equals worth. Depth equals shame. And Riley, when she chooses to walk down instead of climb up, is committing a kind of social heresy. I want to sit with a scene here that I think is the drama's single best piece of atmosphere, because it's the one that stuck to me for days. It's a night scene. Rain, but not the pretty cinematic kind, the cold, seeping kind that makes cloth heavy. Riley has been out somewhere she shouldn't have been, chasing information she wasn't supposed to have, and she comes back soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her cheeks, hands so cold she can't work the door properly. And he's waiting, not scolding, not pacing dramatically, just sitting in the dark with his back against the wall. And when she stumbles in, he stands up so fast it's almost clumsy, which is the first genuinely clumsy thing he's done in the entire show. The camera catches this shot of water dripping off a sleeve onto the stone, tiny sound, huge silence. And he takes her hands, the first time he initiates contact. And he doesn't warm them romantically, he just holds them like he's checking whether she's real. And then he says nothing. He goes and gets a cloth. And the whole scene plays out in silence with only rain and breath and the scrape of fabric. And by the end of it, I was sitting there with my hand over my mouth going, oh no, I care about these two. That's the thing this drama understands that a lot of romances don't. Intimacy isn't built during declarations. It's built during logistics. During someone finding you a dry cloth. During someone noticing you haven't a 10. During someone sitting by the door at night because they don't trust the world not to come in. So here's a question I want you holding as we go deeper, because it's the one the drama is actually asking underneath all the beast bonds and status games. Is Riley's second chance about revenge at all? Or is it about learning to accept care from someone who has nothing to gain? Because the revenge plot is genuinely satisfying, don't get me wrong, but the show keeps quietly undercutting it. Every time Riley scores a point against her sister, the camera doesn't give her a triumphant hero shot. It gives her a beat of hollowness. A held frame where she stares at nothing, and you can tell the win didn't fill the hole. And then it cuts to something small and warm, him waiting, or a shared meal, or a stupid little domestic moment. And that's where the music actually swells. The score literally tells you which victories the story values. It's not subtle if you're listening, but it's subtle if you're only watching the plot. And that ties directly into the psychology of the sister, who I keep coming back to because she is, honestly, the most disturbing character in the show. Her tragedy, and I use that word loosely, because I don't think the show wants us to redeem her, is that she has never once had a moment like that. Nobody has ever sat by her door. Nobody has ever held her hands to see if she was real. She has an approved husband, an elevated position, a stolen crown of public admiration, and she is starving. The drama shows this in these fantastic little moments where she's alone after a triumph and her face just empties. The performance there is genuinely unsettling because it's not sad. It's blank. Like the machine is idling, waiting for the next person to react to. There's one shot I keep thinking about where she's adjusting her hair in a reflective surface, and she does it 3-4 times, tiny corrections, and you realize she cannot stop performing even when no one is watching. That is such a specific, human kind of rot. And the show never gives her a monologue explaining it. It just lets you watch and draw your own conclusions. Now, my slightly unpopular opinion, and I know some of you will fight me on this, I don't think the sister was ever really envious of Riley's life. I think she was envious of Riley's ease. There's a difference. Envy of possessions makes you a thief. Envy of someone's inner peace makes you something worse. Because you can't steal peace. You can only destroy it and hope the destruction feels similar. That's why killing Riley in the first life didn't satisfy her. And that's why stealing the Lion King in the second life doesn't satisfy her either. She keeps taking the wrong thing because the thing she actually wants is not transferable. And the drama, to its credit, seems to know this. It keeps her hungry no matter how much she wins. Which is why the moment her plans finally start turning against her is so gratifying. And also why the show doesn't rush it. Riley doesn't get to expose her in one dramatic public reveal. Instead, the erosion is gradual. A discrepancy noticed here. A witness who quietly stops corroborating. A powerful figure who starts declining invitations. The sister's standing doesn't collapse. It develops a limp. And she can feel it, which makes her more frantic, which makes her sloppier, which makes the limp worse. It's a beautifully ugly downward spiral, and the actress plays it with escalating brittleness. Her smiles get wider and less connected to her eyes. Her voice gets brighter and thinner, like she's trying to charm a room that's already decided. Let me pull you along here, because there's a turn coming that changes the entire emotional register of the story. The moment Riley figures out the truth about him is not the moment he tells her. And that choice is so good. The drama could have gone the easy route. Big confession scene, tearful admission, dramatic transformation in the rain. Instead, it lets Riley arrive at it herself, piece by piece, until knowing becomes unavoidable. And when she knows, she doesn't confront him immediately. She carries it. She sits with it. She watches him do something ordinary, mending something, sharpening something, whatever small domestic act the show chooses. And she looks at his hands and thinks about what those hands actually are. And the camera holds on her face while the realization completes itself in silence. That's a mature filmmaking instinct. The reveal isn't about spectacle. It's about recontextualization. Every scene you've already watched suddenly means something else. Every time he stepped back instead of forward. Every time he let himself be shoved. Every time he swallowed an insult. You go back through the whole show in your head and realize you've been watching an act of extraordinary discipline disguised as cowardice. And Riley realizes it at the exact same moment you do. And her reaction is not what I expected. She's not thrilled. She's not even relieved. She's angry. Genuinely, hotly angry. And it's not the petty, you lied to me anger. It's something much raw. He let people hurt him, in front of her, for months, and she had to watch it and feel helpless and eat that helplessness like glass, and he could have stopped it at any moment, and he chose not to. That's the accusation. Not, you deceived me. You let me suffer watching you suffer. The way that scene is staged is fantastic. She doesn't shout at first. She goes very quiet and very still, which we've learned by now is Riley at her most dangerous. And her voice, when it comes, is low and unsteady, and every sentence sounds like it's costing her. And he takes it. He doesn't defend himself. He stands there and lets her hit him with words the way he's let the world hit him with everything else. And that's when she really breaks, because she realizes he's doing it again, absorbing damage as a form of care. And she cannot stand it. Then he finally speaks, and the show gives him the line I think the whole character has been built around. It's something to the effect of, if he had stopped them, they would have looked at her next. That's it. That's the entire architecture of his cowardice. And it isn't cowardice at all. Every blow he took was a blow that didn't get redirected at her. Every humiliation was a wall. And Riley, who has spent this entire second life learning to spot the hidden costs of things, finally sees the price tag on her own safety, and it's written in his blood. I'm not going to pretend I held it together. I did the thing where you pause the show and stare at the wall for a second. My partner walked past and asked if I was okay, and I said, yeah, it's just the dragon guy, which is not a sentence that translates well out of context. But here's what I want to highlight about the craft of that scene, because it's the moment the two performances lock into each other. Up to this point, they've been acting in different registers. She's expressive, reactive, alive on the surface. He's contained, minimal, everything happening under the skin. In this scene, they swap. She goes still and quiet. He, for the first time, lets emotion move across his face in real time. It's like the show has been saving his expressiveness for exactly this, and when it arrives, it lands with the force of a dam breaking. His eyes do this thing where they fill but don't spill, and his jaw works, and he keeps starting sentences he can't finish. After hours of watching this man be a locked door, watching him fumble for words is genuinely devastating. And here's where the drama earns its romance. Because what Riley does next is the whole thesis of her character. She doesn't fall into his arms. She doesn't forgive him instantly. She says, essentially, never again. Not never lie to me again. Never protect me by hurting yourself again. She demands partnership instead of sacrifice. And that's a really specific, really adult thing for a genre heroine to ask for. Hold on to that, because everything in the late stretch flows from it. The story stops being about whether he'll reveal himself and starts being about whether he can learn to be protected. Because that's his arc. And I didn't see it coming. I assumed the arc was Hidden King reclaims throne. It's not, or at least, that's the plot, not the arc. The arc is a being of enormous power learning that he's allowed to be tired. Learning that someone can stand in front of him. Learning that hiding wasn't only strategic, it was penance. The show gradually implies that whatever happened in his past, whatever forced the dragon underground, he blames himself for it. There's a suggestion that his power cost people, that the last time he was fully himself, something terrible happened, and he has spent the intervening time performing weakness partly as camouflage and partly as self-imposed sentence. That reading transforms the underground bug nickname from a cheap insult into something almost self-inflicted. He didn't just accept the name. On some level, he agreed with it. And Riley, who was murdered for the crime of being happy, is uniquely equipped to argue with that logic. Because she knows what it's like to be punished for existing. The two of them are mirror images. She was destroyed for shining too brightly. He destroyed himself for the same reason. Her second chance is about learning that she's allowed to want. His is about learning that he's allowed to be. That's the subtext. That's what the show is actually about underneath all the beast bonds and status politics and stolen Lion Kings. And the fact that it delivers that theme through a genre package that could have coasted on tropes is, to me, the reason this thing is worth your time. Now let's talk about where the drama starts to wobble. Because I promised you honesty, and I'm not going to sit here pretending it's flawless. The world building around the choosing system is compelling, but underexplained in places. The show tells us bonds determine status, protection, resources. Fine, I'm with you. But the specific mechanics get fuzzy exactly when the plot needs them to be fuzzy. Certain things can be appealed and certain things can't. And the dividing line seems to move depending on what tension the story wants. There is a stretch where I genuinely couldn't tell whether Riley had legal recourse or not, and the ambiguity felt less like mystery and more like convenience. Similarly, the sisters' institutional reach expands and contracts. Sometimes she can pull strings at what looks like a governing level. Other times, she's reduced to spreading gossip like a bored aristocrat. Both versions are entertaining, but they don't quite reconcile. I think the show wanted her to be both a personal antagonist and a systemic one, and it never fully committed to either, so she occasionally feels like whatever the scene requires. And the pacing in the middle section does sag. I said earlier that I like the slower domestic stretch, and I did. But there's a run of scenes where the same beat repeats. Sister humiliates Riley. Riley endures with dignity. He suffers silently. Small moment of tenderness. Repeat. It's a good beat. It's just a beat that gets played 4 or 5 times when 3 would have been plenty. You can feel the show padding. And in a genre where 2026 audiences are increasingly impatient, that's a risk. If people bounce off this drama, I'd bet money it happens right around there. My other complaint is one I have with a lot of these reincarnation setups. The show underuses the future knowledge. Riley remembers dying. She remembers her sister's betrayal. But she uses that knowledge surprisingly sparingly. There are moments where you're screaming at the screen, you know what she's going to do. Why are you? And the show's answer is basically that Riley's presence has changed events enough that her memory isn't reliable. Which is a legitimate answer. But it's used a little too conveniently, as a way to keep the plot unpredictable while still getting the emotional benefits of a rebirth premise. You can't have your foreknowledge and eat it too. That said, and here's where I'll defend the show against what I expect will be the loudest criticism. I've seen people complain that Riley is too passive in the first half. I don't think that's a fair read. I think that's a genre expectation being imposed on a character who's doing something different. Riley isn't passive. Riley is a person with post-traumatic hypervigilance operating inside a hostile social structure with zero institutional power. What people are calling passivity is actually the most realistic depiction of survival I've seen in this genre in a while. She isn't waiting to be rescued. She's calculating, and calculation looks boring from the outside. The moment she has leverage, she uses it ruthlessly. The problem isn't that she's passive. It's that we've been trained by 100 other shows to expect the heroine to start slapping people in the second episode. If anything, I'd argue the drama's willingness to let its lead be strategic instead of explosive is its bravest choice. Okay, let me shift gears, because I want to talk about the visual grammar of the reveal sequences, and specifically how this show handles the dragon without ruining it. The smart-ass decision the production made was restraint with the transformation. This is a 2026 drama, and CGI dragons are, let's be honest, a coin flip. Half the time they look magnificent, and half the time they look like an insurance commercial. So the show mostly doesn't show you. It shows you the effect of him. Dust lifting off the ground. A candle flame bending away rather than toward. People's expressions going slack with an animal fear they can't articulate. There's one shot, of something enormous moving in shadow at a distance, and the camera is at ground level, and you see the shadow pass over the frame, and it takes a beat too long to pass, which is how you understand the scale. That's it. That's how you do it. Suggestion plus reaction plus a single well-chosen image. It's what Spielberg figured out with a shark half a century ago, and what a shocking number of productions still haven't learned. And when he does finally step forward as himself, when the mask comes off in a way that can't be walked back, the show frames it not as a power fantasy, but as an unveiling of grief. He's not triumphant. He looks like someone who's just been forced to take off a bandage in front of a crowd. The lighting goes hard and cold on him. The sound design pulls almost everything out except a single sustained low tone that sits in your chest. And the crowd doesn't cheer or scream, they just go silent. And the silence lasts uncomfortably long, and that discomfort is the point. Nobody knows how to react to a myth standing in the room. The social machinery breaks down because there's no protocol for this. Riley's reaction in that moment is the emotional anchor. She's the only person not looking at him with fear or awe. She's looking at him with recognition. Same face she's been looking at for the whole show. And he finds her in the crowd. The camera does this lovely thing where the focus rack pulls from the terrified faces to hers, and something in his shoulders comes down about half an inch. That half inch is the entire relationship. Let me hook you one more time, because the aftermath is where the drama gets genuinely interesting in ways I think people will underrate. Revealing the dragon doesn't fix anything. It makes everything more dangerous. And I love that. So many shows treat the identity reveal as the resolution. Here it's an escalation. Because now the political question is live. Now factions have to decide where they stand. Now the Lion King has to reckon with the fact that the hierarchy he embodies has been sitting on top of something older and stronger the entire time. Now the sister has a new, catastrophically dangerous piece of information. The man she spent the entire story mocking is the most powerful being in the world, and she gave him to Riley. The look on her face when that lands is worth the price of admission. It's not fear at first. It's arithmetic. You can watch her recalculate her entire life in about 2 seconds, and then the arithmetic produces a result she can't accept. And then it becomes fear. And then, this is the chilling part, it becomes something like desire. Because of course, she wants him now. Of course she does. He's the high-status thing in existence, and she has spent her entire life defining herself by acquiring high-status things. The show doesn't have to spell it out. You watch her covet him in real time, and you feel sick. And Riley clocks it. Of course she does. Riley has been reading her sister's face since before she died. There's a wordless exchange between the two of them in that scene, just eyes across a room. And it communicates an entire history of predation and survival. Riley's expression says, "Not this time." And it's not smug. It's tired. That's what I loved about it. She's not enjoying this. She's just done. Now, the way the story handles the Lion King in the final stretches, I think, the most divisive element. And I want to be careful here because I'm keeping this moderate on spoilers. But broadly, the show refuses to make him a villain, and it refuses to make him a hero. He occupies this uncomfortable middle space where he has to decide whether his honor is real or whether it was just a costume that fit well. And the drama makes him actually reckon with that. There's a moment where he looks at Riley, the woman he was supposed to be matched with, the woman he watched fall. And you can see him understand that his silence was a choice. That his discomfort while she was humiliated was worth exactly nothing because he never converted it into action. That's a rough thing for a show to say out loud about a beloved archetype. The noble prince who felt bad but didn't help is still someone who didn't help. And I respect the drama for landing that punch without turning him into a monster to make it easier. Some viewers are going to want him punished more. Some are going to want him redeemed more. I think the ambiguity is correct. And I think it's the mark of a show with a coherent thesis because the whole story is about how systems of respectability protect people who don't deserve protection. He's the most respectable person in the show. Of course he's complicit. That's the point. Okay, I want to spend some real time on the two lead performances now, because they're carrying this thing, and I don't think either gets enough credit in the conversations I've seen. Riley's actress is doing something technically difficult that I don't think is widely appreciated. She's playing two ages at once. Riley has the body and social position of a young woman on her choosing day, but she has the memory of someone who lived past that and died. So there are these moments where much older, much more exhausted person surfaces in a young face. Watch her eyes during social scenes, there's this flatness that comes over them, a kind of "I've seen where this goes" weariness. And then she deliberately reanimates her expression because she knows flatness is suspicious. She's performing youth, and every so often the performance slips and someone catches it, and you see her scramble to cover. That's a whole extra layer of acting that the script doesn't strictly demand, and she does it consistently. The moment I clocked it was in an early scene where someone says something Riley has heard before in her first life, and there are microseconds where she starts to answer before they finish, and then she stops herself. It's tiny. It's brilliant. It tells you her body is running ahead of her performance. And the physical work she does around trauma is specific rather than generic. She doesn't do the standard trembling lip thing. Her trauma lives in her throat and her hands. She touches her neck when she's frightened, a repeated, half-conscious gesture that I'm almost certain is deliberate, tied to how she died. She holds objects too tightly. When she's overwhelmed, she goes very quiet, and her breathing gets shallow and high, and you can hear it in the sound mix because the sound design brings her breath forward in those moments. Him, meanwhile, is doing the harder and less showy job. I said earlier that this role dies if the balance is off, and I want to expand on that. The trap with secretly powerful characters is that actors want to telegraph the secret. They want the audience to see how cool they really are. It's a natural impulse, and it ruins the performance every time. Because if the disguise reads as a disguise, everyone in the story who's fooled by it looks like an idiot. This guy resists that almost completely. His weakness reads as genuine because he's not playing pretending to be weak. He's playing carrying something heavy. Those look similar from the outside. The stoop, the lowered eyes, the slow movements, that could be frailty or it could be exhaustion. And he lets the ambiguity sit. The only tells are things you'd never consciously register. His balance is too good. His peripheral awareness is too sharp. He never startles at loud noises. Real frail people startle. He doesn't, because nothing in that room could actually hurt him. And his nervous system knows it even when his performance doesn't. That's a level of detail work that suggests either a very smart actor or a very smart director, and probably both. And his voice work deserves a mention. In the weak mode he speaks with this slight hesitancy, sentences trailing off, volume just under conversational. The vocal pattern of someone who's been interrupted his whole life and has stopped expecting to finish. When the mask slips, the voice drops maybe a third of an octave and, more importantly, the pace changes. He stops rushing. He puts space between words. Powerful people don't hurry their sentences because they've never had to worry about being cut off. It's such a smart, invisible choice. Let me carry you forward with this, because the ending sequences of this drama do something I want to dig into. The show has to decide whether Riley's revenge or Riley's love is the actual climax, and the choice it makes tells you everything about what kind of story this was all along. I won't detail the mechanics, but I'll say this. The confrontation between Riley and her sister is not a fight. It's not a duel or a power display or a public execution of reputation with a rousing speech. It's smaller and much colder than that, and the room where it happens is almost empty, and the thing Riley says is not a burn. It's a diagnosis. She names the thing her sister is, out loud, plainly, without cruelty and without mercy, and then she leaves. That's it. And I've seen people call that anticlimactic, and I want to argue with them respectfully. The reason it's not anticlimactic is that the sister's entire architecture requires an audience. She needs witnesses. She needs the story of herself reflected back. Riley denying her a scene, denying her a spectacle, denying her the dignity of being a worthy opponent, that's the most devastating thing available. Riley doesn't defeat her. Riley declines to participate. And for someone who exists only in comparison, being refused the comparison is annihilation. Is it as viscerally satisfying as watching her get dramatically destroyed in front of a crowd? No, absolutely not. I'll be honest, part of my lizard brain wanted the crowd version. But the quiet version is truer to who Riley became. And the show earns it by spending the entire runtime establishing that Riley's superpower is refusing to play by her sister's rules. The romantic climax, by contrast, is loud. And I think that inversion is deliberate and lovely. The revenge is whispered. The love is declared. That's the show telling you which one it thinks matters. And the way it handles the final movement of their relationship, the thing I said earlier about him learning to be protected, pays off in a way I found genuinely moving. There's a moment near the end where Riley steps in front of him again, the way she did back when everyone thought he was worthless. Except now everyone knows exactly what he is, and the gesture is objectively absurd. She cannot protect him. She has no power that's relevant. And she does it anyway, and he lets her. He lets her, and the show holds on his face why he lets her. And the emotional content of that shot is basically, I have never in my long life been stood in front of. That's the whole show. That's the thesis in one image. Let me talk about the ending's emotional register for a second without spelling out events, because I think the drama makes an interesting tonal choice in its last stretch. It doesn't go for euphoria. There's warmth, there's resolution, there's the sense of a wound closing, but the show keeps a shadow in the frame. The world hasn't been fixed. The hierarchy that crushed him and humiliated her still exists in modified form. Some people who deserved consequences got fewer than they should have. And Riley knows it. There's a shot late on where she's looking out at something, and her expression isn't joyful, it's watchful. Still watchful. I read that as the show being honest about what surviving costs. You don't get your innocence back. Riley will never again be the girl who walked into choosing day expecting the world to be kind. She got something better and something worse. Clarity. And here's my personal confession, the one I've been circling. That's the thing that got me, more than the romance, more than the revenge. It's the depiction of what it does to a person to have been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love them. I've watched people in my own life go through the family version of this. Not murder, obviously. We're not in a Beastman fantasy. But the version where a sibling or a parent turns out to have been quietly working against you for years, and the discovery reorganizes your entire past. Every memory gets re-examined. Every kindness becomes suspect. And you can't explain to people why you flinch at things that look harmless, because the harm was always disguised as harmless. The show gets that. It gets it in a way that surprised me, coming from a genre package with dragons and Lion Kings in it. And that dissonance, profound emotional truth, wearing a shiny fantasy costume, is exactly why I keep watching these things. The costume lets the truth in through the side door. Okay, tonal shift. Let's talk about the stuff that's just plain fun. Because I don't want to leave you thinking this is a two-tone meditation on trauma. It's not. It's frequently a blast. The petty social warfare is delicious. There's a whole vocabulary of aristocratic passive aggression in this show that I found genuinely funny. The way people compliment each other's clothing as an insult, the way seating arrangements function as violence, the way a delayed greeting can end a friendship. There's a scene at some gathering where Riley is served last, deliberately, and she just waits, serenely, making eye contact, until the discomfort in the room becomes unbearable and someone else has to fix it. That's a power move, and I cheered. The show also has a decent sense of humor about its own tropes. The underground bug nickname gets deployed at one point in a way that's clearly meant to make you laugh, and it works. And there are a couple of moments where side characters react to the whole situation with normal person incredulity that punctures the melodrama nicely. One background character's face during a big dramatic reveal is doing so much comedic work that I genuinely wonder if it was directed or if the extra just went for it. And the domestic scenes between the leads have a warmth and awkwardness that's charming. He's terrible at ordinary life. There's a running texture where he doesn't know how to do simple social things, how to accept a gift, how to sit at a table with people, how to respond to a joke. And it's funny until you realize why. And then it's sad. And then it's funny again because Riley starts teaching him like he's a very large, very dangerous foreign exchange student. Alright, let me hook you into the last stretch of my thoughts here, because I want to zoom out and talk about what this drama represents in the 2026 landscape, and whether it actually pushes the genre forward or just polishes it. I think it does both, unevenly. The reincarnation revenge romance format has been on an absolute tear the last few years, and a lot of it has been running on fumes. The same beats, the same slap-in-the-face episode to structure, the same glow-up montages, the same villainous sibling with no interiority. What Married to the Hidden Dragon King does that feels genuinely current is treat the trauma as trauma rather than as motivation fuel. Riley isn't sharpened by her death into a cool, unfeeling avenger. She's damaged by it. She has bad nights. She misreads situations because fear distorts her judgment. She occasionally pushes away the one person being decent to her because decency reads as a trap. That's a real evolution. It's the difference between using trauma as a plot device and using it as characterization. Where it doesn't push forward is the structural stuff. The status fall and rise architecture is very familiar. The public humiliation set pieces follow a template. The reveal beats hit roughly where you'd predict. If you're a genre veteran, you'll be about 15 minutes ahead of the plot for most of the runtime, and the show doesn't seem particularly interested in outsmarting you. Its ambitions are emotional, not structural. And I think that's a legitimate choice, but it does mean your enjoyment scales with how much you care about interiority versus surprise. If you watch these for the plot twists, you'll find this one predictable. If you watch them for the ache, you'll find this one unusually rich. There's also a craft question I keep turning over, which is whether the show's visual restraint is a strength or a limitation. I've praised the restrained dragon, and I stand by that. But there's a version of this story that goes bigger in its final movement, that lets the mythology breathe, that shows you the scale of what he is and what the world lost when it buried him. This version keeps things intimate almost to a fault. And for a story whose entire theme is about buried power finally surfacing, there's an argument that the surfacing should feel more overwhelming than it does. I go back and forth. On balance, I think intimacy was the right call, because the emotional story is the real story, and a big spectacle final would have made the last act about the world instead of about the two of them. But I understand viewers who wanted more sky. The score, though, the score I have no reservations about. I mentioned the thematic separation earlier, the delicate motifs for tenderness and the brittle high strings for the sister and the subterranean rumble for him. What I didn't mention is what happens when those themes start bleeding into each other in the later stretch. There's a point where his low rumble starts appearing underneath her tender melody, and the effect is extraordinary. It's the sound of danger and safety becoming the same thing. And in the final movement, the tender melody gets played on something bigger, fuller, with actual brass behind it. And it's the same tune that was afraid to take up space in the early episodes, now filling the room. That's musical storytelling. That's composition doing character work. The sound design deserves equal credit. This show understands silence. It knows that dropping the ambient bed out of a scene creates more tension than adding a stinger. There are at least 3 moments where the smartest sonic choice was nothing at all, and the show made that choice each time. Let me pull one more thread before I start bringing this in, because I don't want to leave it unexamined. The show's treatment of the beast bond as a metaphor. The bond, as the drama constructs it, is involuntary, socially determined, and permanent. You don't choose your bond, the choosing chooses. And your entire life outcome, safety, status, resources, respect, flows from an event you don't control. If that doesn't read as a metaphor for birth circumstance, I don't know what does. Riley's fall isn't a moral failing. It's a lottery result plus a rigged draw. And the way society treats her afterward, as if the downgrade reflects something true about her worth, is the exact logic of every hierarchy that dresses up luck as merit. The show gets this, and it makes the point most sharply through the bystanders. Not the sister. The sister is a criminal. She's easy to condemn. The bystanders are the argument. The people who whisper. The people who serve Riley last. The people who laugh when he's shoved. None of them are villains. All of them are load-bearing. Remove the sister, and the system still crushes Riley. That's a genuinely uncomfortable thing for a comfort genre drama to insist on, and the show insists on it repeatedly. And it offers no easy answer, which I appreciate. Riley doesn't fix society. She survives it, she carves out a life inside it, and she stops apologizing for existing. That's not a revolution. It's just a person refusing to be diminished. In a story this size, that might be the only honest ending available. So who is this for? If you love slow burn romance, where the intimacy is built out of small acts rather than dramatic declarations, this is going to hit you hard. If you have a weakness, as I clearly do, for the everyone underestimates him, and one person doesn't dynamic, prepare to be thoroughly manipulated and to enjoy it. If you're drawn to stories about surviving family betrayal, about the specific loneliness of being the person nobody believes, this drama treats that experience with more care than the genre usually manages. If you're here for world-building rigor, temper expectations. The rules bend. The politics are impressionistic. Don't build a wiki in your head, you'll find contradictions. If you need your revenge served hot, loud, and public, you're going to be frustrated by the final confrontation and possibly by Riley's whole methodology. This show's idea of catharsis is quiet and psychological. And if that's not your flavor, no amount of my enthusiasm will fix it. And if you're allergic to the setup itself, the murdered heroine, the reborn heroine, the evil sister, the misjudged beast, look, the premise is the premise. It doesn't reinvent the scaffolding. It just builds something more thoughtful on top of it than usual. For me, personally, this landed well above expectations. I went in anticipating a fun, disposable trope delivery system, and I got something with an actual soul in it. It's not perfect. The middle drags, the sister's power fluctuates, and the show is occasionally too pleased with its own restraint. But the two central performances are doing genuinely careful, considered work. The direction understands that faces are more interesting than effects, and the emotional through line to people who both learned that being seen is dangerous, slowly deciding to be seen by each other, is executed with real tenderness. That image of him standing in a crowded room, the most powerful thing alive, letting a woman with no power at all step in front of him, I'll be thinking about that one for a while. It's the kind of moment that justifies a whole show. So yeah, watch it. Go in for the trope, stay for the ache. Give it patience through the middle sag, and it'll pay you back in the last stretch. If you made it all the way here with me, thank you, genuinely. This got long because the show gave me a lot to chew on, and I'd rather ramble with you than give you a scorecard. Tell me in the comments whether you read the sister the way I did, because I know some of you are going to argue she deserved more than a quiet dismissal, and I want to hear that case. And if this is your first time hanging out with me, this is what we do around here at Flick Flair. We take the dramas everyone calls guilty pleasures and we take them seriously, because sometimes the silly-sounding ones are the ones hiding the real thing. Subscribe if that sounds like your kind of evening. Until the next one, keep an eye on the quiet ones. They're usually carrying something enormous,